Director of Devon House, Mr. Delano Seavright, will be here shortly, as well as Mr. Kingsley Roberts, Jillian Delgado. Today is very special because it's the resumption of our face-to-face media briefing. So let me especially welcome our media partners who are here with us, the Jamaica Observer, Sportsmax, and others. Now, this week as well, we will also entertain some of our media online. We aren't fully going to abandon the online process, but we are happy to see our media partners here today for the resumption of our face-to-face media briefings. And so, without further ado, let me welcome the Minister without Portfolio here at the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Robert Morgan, to bring you through the Cabinet decisions. Minister.
Thank you, Naomi, and thanks to Ministers Malou Fort and Bartlett. Excellent presentation yesterday, sir. We will begin with a presentation of the decisions of Cabinet, after which we'll have a presentation by Minister Marlene Malou Fort, and also following that, a presentation by Minister Edmund Bartlett. I would like to start with the decisions of Cabinet, with the proposal to amend the Education Act 1965, and this is regarding the criteria for the appointment of principals. Cabinet gave approval for the amendment of Section 43(1) of the Education Act 1965 and the attending sections of the Education Regulations 1980 regarding the criteria for the appointment of principals. The proposed amendments are to ensure that principals possess the requisite educational qualification and training in line with the current international standards. These changes are geared towards improving quality of leadership and the general management of our educational institutions. Cabinet also approved the proposal for a change from the use of Section 3, subsection 3 to Section 4 of the Public Procurement Act as the mechanism for the exclusion of the National Education Trust School Architectural Design Competition from the public procurement procedures. There was also the approval for the proposed change by the Ministry of Education and Youth for the use of Section 3, subsection 3, pursuant to Section 4 of the Act 2015 and the Public Procurement Regulations 2018 as the mechanism for the, well, I guess we're repeating it, so we can continue up. There's also the proposal for the transfer of the National Council on Technical, Vocational Education and Training, NCTVET, external quality assurance functions and related matters. Cabinet gave my apologies. There was also the approval of the purchase of a property located at 6 Upper Lady Musgrave Road, and this approval was done to purchase the property from the National Commercial Bank, Insurance Agency and Fund Managers Limited at a total of $220 million. The property will be registered in the name of the Commissioner of Lands and will be used for the purpose of housing the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offences and Carnal Abuse. There is also approval for the project development process for the piloting and agribusiness cold chain for Jamaica ABC project. There was also the approval of the relocation of the Jamaica Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to part of the premises at 193 Old Hope Road. I think this is Hope Gardens. And this was done because of challenges the JSPC has been having with their current location. There was also the approval of the Government of Jamaica Service Excellence Policy, which is geared towards standardizing the way in which ministries, agencies, and departments engage and treat with customers. As such, it is expected that the public, once implemented, will recognize positive changes in their interactions with ministries, departments, and agencies. As you may have been advised through Parliament, there was also the approval for the reduction of import duties on electric-powered vehicles from 30% to 10%, and the exemption of the annual registration fees on batteries for electric vehicles. We also saw the appointment of the board of the members of the board of the Standard Council, members of the board of the Advisory and Appeal Tribunal of the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, appointment of an additional member in the name of Mr. Christopher Record, for the National Information and Communication Technology Advisory Council. We also saw the appointment of directors for the Jamaica Agricultural Commodities Regulatory Authority, as well as members of the board of the National Export-Import Bank, which is called the Exim Bank. We also saw the appointment of members of the board of directors for the Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, as well as appointment of members as replacements to previous appointees to the National Council on Education, and members were also appointed to the Charities Appeal Tribunal, as well as the Advisory Board of the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office. As it relates to contracts that were approved, Cabinet approved the award of contracts for a contract for the construction of the administrative building of the St. Anne Health Department for the period of 14 months to Otiga Engineers Limited. There was also the approval of a contract for the provision of administrative services for the Government Pensioners Administrative Services Only GPASO Health Scheme and related services. This contract was awarded at a rate of 5.25% of the first year's premium. Cabinet also approved the award of a contract for the provision of the management services for government employee transportation services to Bloomfield Jamaica Limited for a period of 3 years. And also, Microsoft was also awarded a contract for its Microsoft Enterprise Agreement in the amount of $1,347 million. There was also the approval of a variation of a contract for architectural services for the project to renovate a public building west in the amount of $27 million, or 61% of the original contract, to Harold Morrison and Robert Woodstock and Associates Limited. Therein endeth the readings of Cabinet decisions, contracts, and approvals, Minister. I would like to now welcome Minister Malawi Fort to make her presentation, and then we will have the star of yesterday's Parliament, Minister Edmund Bartlett, who gave us some really good news, who will also make a presentation, after which we will take questions. Minister.
Thank you, Minister Morgan, Honorable Edmund Bartlett, our House Leader and esteemed Minister of Tourism. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good morning. I know that everyone is wondering about the constitutional reforms that seem to be among the most topical issues in the nation. I should like to tell you that when my time comes to make the sectoral presentation, you will hear the details of what is to come. In the meantime, I should like you to know that the Constitution sets out its own process for amendment, and we cannot deviate from it. The commitment of the Prime Minister to transition Jamaica away from a constitutional monarchy is one that will be kept. But I know persons are wondering whether we will have it done in time for the celebration of Jamaica 60. Unfortunately, the procedures set out in the Constitution will not permit that timing to be met. I know many of you have looked on Barbados and are wondering whether it can be done as simply and as easily as it was done there. Well, they have different constitutional provisions. And unlike Jamaica, they did not require a vote from the people to make that important change in their constitution. So today, I'd really like to tell you that in order for the Constitution of Jamaica to be amended, the procedures that are set out in the Constitution have to be followed. And we generally have three types of provisions in the Constitution of Jamaica. What you call ordinary provisions, which require a majority of all members of the House of Parliament, different from all members present and voting, what we call a simple majority. And these are the non-entrenched provisions. And constitutional scholars say that non-entrenched provisions really refer to those provisions that are not considered generally vital to the survival of the principles of parliamentary democracy and constitutionalism, which form the basis of the constitutional system. Nonetheless, they do have important provisions. And then we have the second type of provisions referred to as the ordinarily entrenched provisions. And in the Jamaica Constitution, these include the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, parliamentary privilege of freedom of speech, delimitation of constituencies, and the establishment of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, for example. And again, constitutional scholar and our own Dr. Barnett, in opining on these provisions, indicated that there is really no common factor present in all provisions falling within the class of ordinarily entrenched provisions. But they can be said to be those that are concerned with safeguarding individual liberties and the rule of law and the protection of the executive from domination and political pressure of persons having special responsibilities. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we come to what is called the deeply entrenched provisions, and these are going to be of concern to you as you hear about or move to the Republic of Jamaica. Section 49 tells you what has to be done in order to make an amendment to these provisions, and also which provisions fall in this category. And among them are the provisions relating to Parliament at Section 34, which provides that the Parliament of Jamaica consists of Her Majesty the Queen, the Senate, and the House. There is also Section 35, which speaks to the Senate, comprising 8 senators appointed on the recommendation of the Prime Minister, 13 government senators appointed on the recommendation of the Prime Minister, and 8 on the recommendation of the Leader of the Opposition. And I mention this because when I took stock of some of the matters on which discussion has been ripe on constitutional reform, this is one of the provisions. And then we have others, including 36, which speaks to qualification for election to the House, persons who are qualified for election, and 39, qualification to serve in the Parliament of Jamaica. Commonwealth citizen over the age of 21 years, ordinarily resident in Jamaica in the preceding 12 months. You would know that this one is of concern to Jamaicans in the diaspora who hold citizenship outside of the Commonwealth. And then there is also Section 68(1), which speaks to the executive powers being vested in Her Majesty. The deeply entrenched provisions, ladies and gentlemen, require a vote of 2/3 members of both houses, and it also requires a vote by members who are qualified to vote in general elections. That's what we call the referendum. But before a bill which seeks to amend the ordinarily or deeply entrenched provisions can go through, there is a requirement of a 3-month period between the date when the bill is tabled on the House and the commencement of debate. So here we are now in April, and we're in the middle. We have just commenced the sectoral presentation. Even if the bill were to be tabled, you'd have May, June, July. before any debate could commence, because that is what the Constitution says. And then after the debate is concluded, you would also need another 3 months before the bill can be passed in the House. So if you take away nothing else, is to understand that we have to go through a constitutional process to achieve the goal of moving Jamaica from a constitutional monarchy to a republic. And in Jamaica, we have constitutional supremacy. Whatever we do must be in accordance with the Constitution, and I think by now everybody kind of understand that. I will be available for your questions when that time comes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister. I think that was a very important presentation, as there have been questions from members of the media over time about the process through which Jamaica seeks to ask the public the question of whether we should become a republic or not. I would now invite Minister Edmund Bartlett to make his presentation. Minister.
Thank you, Minister Morgan, my colleague, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, and how very eloquent she was, as she's erudite, in explaining the Constitution and its measures, and how important it is for us to appreciate the context of that constitutional framework and its efficacies, and how we can maneuver to make it a live and living thing as it really ought to be. I want to thank the media for coming out this morning to hear one or two items of perhaps explanation, if not extrapolation, or clarification, or indeed extension of the thoughts and ideas that we had expressed yesterday during my budget presentation. I think that what we sought to do was to create and present a report on the performance of the industry during the pandemic and the elements of the pandemic that we've had to manage so far, given that the pandemic is still officially not over. Unofficially, the world is moving on, but officially it's not over. And then we also sought to show a roadmap of the way forward, how this recovery is being configured and architectured, and how it is going to be implemented, what is required for it, and the extent to which it brings challenges, and also how we propose to manage the challenges. So I think the first critical area that is important is the fact that the industry continues to grow, and its growth is ahead of the global growth rate, as it is also ahead of the regional growth rate, and that Jamaica is in fact the fastest growing tourism economy in this recovery process. And we say that fully cognizant of how DOMREP is recovering and how Mexico is recovering. These are our two main competitors within the Caribbean space. So we expect that the recovery in terms of visitor arrivals will be between 2023 and 2024. We're expecting at that point to have eclipsed arrivals to some 4.5 million, just a little over the 4.3 that we had in 2019. But in terms of the earnings, we will be close to $5 billion during that period. So we expect that earnings would, by the end of 23, surpass the earnings of 2019. And that's significant because previously your arrivals would go far ahead of your earnings. And the rate of increase of your arrivals always surpass your earnings. This is a unique situation for Jamaica, that our earnings are surpassing our arrivals by way of rate of growth. And that's a very significant matter because it has implications for your foreign exchange earnings in the country. And it has implications also for the revenue that we generate for the Consult Fund. As you know, we are very consumer-oriented. Tourism has the highest propensity for consumption of all industries. And once it grows, it then makes all other industries grow, because what it does is to feed on the output of all the other industries in the country. So it is little wonder that the recovery of tourism has been so intricately tied to the recovery of the GDP and the growth of our GDP. And so that in all the 4 quarters that the country has shown economic growth, that growth has been led by tourism. Now, to enable the recovery to be sustainable, we have to contend with global disruptions which are continuing. The main one being, of course, the pandemic. But the result of the pandemic, and yesterday I spoke about the environmental scientists who gave us a kind of description of what this Anthropocene era has been doing to us as a result of the pandemic, that it has caused a pause. The world, for 2.5 years, did very little. The production processes almost came to a halt. The transportation arrangements, the logistics, and all of the related activities that enable the movement of goods and services and international trade literally came to a halt. So the resources that are available to countries are by and large resources that are indigenous to those countries. And countries like Jamaica, that has a high propensity for import, where our whole development and whole economy is based on import. We are going to be challenged, and we are being challenged now. So this anthropause that the scientists talk about, that enabled a refreshing of the world in a way, environmentally, but it caused serious disruption in terms of supplies. And that supply disruption has also affected human capital. So the workers of the industry, for example, who were in large numbers, 170,000 of them, and we lost 130 during the disruption, but 90% of them have come back. But guess what has happened? Those 90 that came back have been drifting out, because they are being recruited now by the international world, where they are having the same level of disruptions that in supply that we're having. So they're after our staff, and they're doing a good job at it. We have lost 20,000 tourism workers in the last year and a half to international recruiters. And it's not a painful thought, because we train them to be both mobile and portable. So we gave them the certification, they have the skills, so they are now portable. They can work anywhere in the world. So we're happy about that. But what it does is to drive a new challenge for training and development of more and more skills. And we're trying to do that. But in the meantime, we have to be careful, because we are at risk of offering a lower level of service if we're not careful, and less efficiencies in our system, and that will impact our competitiveness. So that's one first area of concern that we're working through. The second one, of course, has to do with the actual goods themselves. your agricultural supplies that are needed in the industry. And we're, as I said, we're highly consumption oriented, 24/7. And the consumption pattern of the tourist is 3 times that of the local. So when our agriculturalists have to produce now for the 3 million Jamaicans eating every day, you have to now consider supplying another million at least on a daily basis. Because if you get 3 million visitors, even 4, it works out to be about 1 million per day that you will have to feed. So you now have to produce for 4 million. So that challenges your productive capacity. And so we have to move toward it. And one of the proposals that we're making in this regard is for us to establish a tourism supplies logistics center. And the Minister of Finance is very warm to it. Because what it will do, in addition to everything else, is to provide a new scale of employment for different skill sets. So within the special economic zone, for example, we could have these production centers that are producing, agro-processed goods, chutneys and jams and jellies and juices and nectars. We could be producing more of the beverage that the industry needs. We could be producing the furniture that the industry needs and so on. And that would then be exported to Jamaica from Jamaica, because you know that concept. And because tourism earns in foreign exchange, it will be able to pay in foreign exchange. So the producers within the free zone would be export producers, producing for Jamaica, while at the same time would provide near-shore arrangements for our colleagues in the rest of the Caribbean and other places. So that, I think, is a concept which we are moving very fast with. I've established a team under Wilfred Bagaloo to look more closely at this whole development and to ensure that we can bring it on stream as fast as possible. In doing so, we'll be able to be attractive also to the cruise lines for home porting, so that they can have their supplies in Jamaica instead of having it in the United States or other places. The second area that we have to consider in terms of trying to bridge this supply chain gap is on marketing. And I think the Director of Tourism has been charged with the responsibility to build out the technological capabilities of our JTB to drive, the digital marketing arrangements. He's done a great job of this. He's worked with Amadeus and other platforms in doing very significant work in the marketplace to track the response to Jamaica in various places, impressions that people have of Jamaica. And just recently when we went to the Middle East for the engagement in that market, he was able to present to Emirates the fact that there were more than 800,000 impressions of Jamaica in the Middle East, which was a strong point to convince them that, yes, you can fly to Jamaica because you can get a full flight. So marketing is something that is a big cost for countries like Jamaica and us in the Caribbean. And we have had what we call international and foreign representation. And that's been a source of leakage too for the earned dollar. But with the technology now, we are able to do that in Jamaica. And we'll be able to do that also in a free zone space, not just for Jamaica, but for the entire region. Procurement, that's another big area. And the cost of procuring. And we can do that here. And we can set up our own logistics company in Jamaica that can supply what the requirements of the rest of the areas are. So this is a new and exciting area that we can explore, which will create new jobs for us. But it also helps to give a broader perspective of tourism, where traditionally it is felt that we are just really about, wonderful servers in hotels and so on and so forth. Tourism is much more than that. And the third area that I wanted to touch on in helping to bridge that gap is the building of knowledge knowledge is the new driver of this era. And the elements of knowledge is in data gathering, data mining, data analytics, and the use of data to make decisions, to make management decisions, to create efficiencies, to create efficiencies in allocation and in application of resources, and also to measure the return on your investment and to manage your process. And so we are spending a lot of time in building out the capacity to mine and generate and analyze data. The Tourist Board is being recommissioned. In fact, we just finished the management audit on the board, and in short order we are going to do a restructuring to focus more on intelligence gathering, market intelligence, and our ability to utilize better data for greater efficiency, to reach more markets, and to be able to measure daily the impact of our advertising spent on the returns to the country. We also have, within the Tourism Enhancement Fund, established the Innovation and Risk Management Division, which is to deal primarily with ideas management and garnering of ideas. We're putting a $31 million there for young people all across Jamaica who have ideas but have no financial backing. Ideas about how do you create new tourism experiences. Ideas of what it is that you can convert into material goods that people could use. Because that's what we do in tourism. We consume everything that your mind can generate. Because we respond to the passions of people. People travel to fulfill their passions. And it's amazing what these passion points are. So every time we travel, people ask what's new, what's different. And the only way to know what's new and what's different is to generate new ideas. And innovation is born from new ideas. So we want to invest in new ideas and to connect ideas with commerce and to connect ideas with process and to give our young people a chance, whether you have graduated from university or you didn't graduate from anywhere, but you have ideas, and those ideas can be converted into material goods and service with a value and a price we are willing to invest in it. Finally, I want to speak about the social development dimensions within the tourism sector as it relates to our human capital and our workers. We developed the pension plan for the industry, not just for workers in hotels or for workers in attraction, but for everybody who works in any area of tourism, from the airports straight to the red cap, to the rafters on the Rio Grande, to the people who sell chicken and jerk pork on the sidewalk, or to the craft vendors. So it's the broadest swath of workers and entrepreneurs that any single pension plan could try to embrace. More than 350,000 Jamaicans are going to be involved in this plan. But it is important for the plan to be fully respected by all. And this is a strong statement I'm making. And we are concerned that there are some elements of the sector that are less embracing. And we understand some of the reasons, but we don't accept it. Because this move is a move to protect the social security of the workers of the industry. Some companies have their own pension plan. We have no problem with that. We say wonderful, because you can't have two. You could also opt to roll it into this big plan, but make sure that every worker has some protection. And you have a responsibility as an employer to contribute to that process, because it's their labor and their effort that is making the resources that you need to sell and the profits that you need to have. And so I'm using this opportunity to urge, because there are possibilities for amendments to the Act which we do not want to use. But we want to urge you to support it fully and to make sure that the registration is going apace. You're not doing too badly now. I gather that a little over 10,000 have been registered already, but we need more, and we need it to move faster. This government is satisfied that our job is not to intervene in the market to cause disruption, but is to support the market to operate equitably and on the basis of merit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Comprehensive. Following on your wonderful presentation yesterday, we will now open the floor for members of the media to pose their questions to either Minister Malahoo Fort or Minister Bartlett. Please start by identifying yourself and your media house, and we will take your questions. Naomi?
Minister, thank you so much. Just to point out as well that we will also be taking questions online, though, again, for the last 2.5 years, we have not had our media representatives here. So for the first time in about 2.5 years, we will have our media here posing questions directly. Online, we have Nationwide and Or Today, and here present with us, we have our media representatives from a variety of media houses. So again, the minister has asked that you raise your hand and then identify your media entity. A mic will be provided to you, so you'll be able to do that. Just as we prepare to hear from the media representatives, Minister Bartlett was, almost bashful in speaking of the tourism pension plan, but let me say that the pension plan for the tourism sector is the only one of its kind in the world, a specific dedicated pension plan for tourism workers. And that is a major achievement for certainly the government and Minister Bartlett as well. And so are there any questions online or here in the banquet hall this morning? There we go, we have one. Go ahead, please, Mr. Hall.
Arthur Hall from the Jamaica Observer. Minister Morgan, I have 2 questions. First one for you. You announced about 8 boards that Cabinet has approved, but we're understanding that there's no advisory board in place for the Jamaica Information Service. When will an advisory board be in place for the Jamaica Information Service? And on what basis will you replace the CEO whose contract was not renewed April 1?
Thank you very much, Arthur. The Jamaica Information Service Board is in the process of being, advisory board rather, is in the process of being impaneled. There's been suggestions to the Prime Minister and others as to who should. You will hear the members of the advisory board. As it relates to who will replace Mr. Namiri, and I would like to take this opportunity to commend her on her 13 years of service. As CEO of the Jamaica Information Service, she did an amazing job in taking JIS to where it is now. Based on the legislation, the process by which the CEO will be employed goes through the Public Services Commission. There will be a public advertisement where persons can apply, and the Public Services Commission will do the interviews and due diligence, and will make a determination as to who is the best candidate for that position.
Is it because there is no CEO in place at the JIS now, why the media has learned, by the way, that the president of Rwanda is going to be visiting the island, and what is the schedule, and how do we get accredited for that visit?
So the convention as it relates to official visits is that the official announcement has to be agreed by both the receiving state and the state from which the official comes, in this case Rwanda. So we can't officially announce a visit without both entities agreeing on a time. But I can assure you, though, that that announcement will come shortly officially, and the public will be well in advance aware of the schedule and events that he'll be participating in, of which I suspect members of the media and civil society and others will be able to participate.
Kimon Francis, the Gleaner. Minister.
Hi, Kimon. Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to see you face to face after so long.
Good to see you too.
Can't say the same about Arthur, though.
Prime Minister cites issues and concerns as factors behind Minister Johnson Smith's challenge for Commonwealth Secretary General. Does the Holiness Administration have concerns about Baroness Scotland's stewardship, contract allegations, and the funding withdrawal?
So, I'm very happy that you raised the point. And I will have to take the tone and tenor of the Prime Minister yesterday. Minister Johnson Smith's candidature is a positive candidature. And I'm not going to feed in, or the government is not going to feed into any conversations related to the tenure of the incumbent. That is a matter that the incumbent will have to address on her own. Our duty is to promote the excellence of our candidate, and I'm sure you'll agree that she's an excellent candidate, competent, well-read, and has a positive and substantial reputation internationally. Based on the Prime Minister's commentary yesterday, you'd have heard of many states who have agreed or have offered to be ambassadors for this candidature. You would have heard of significant support from regions across the world. Our candidate is about building bridges and to speak about the positive attributes of the Commonwealth and how we as a nation can contribute to that positivity. So we're not going to get into any conversations about another candidate. We're focused on our candidate.
But this was asked against the backdrop of the Prime Minister stating issues and concerns. Now I'm asking, what are those issues and concerns?
And I'm suggesting to you that he went as far down the wicket as the government is willing to go on that matter. So I will not contradict or add to his wise words.
Thank you, Minister Kimon and Arthur. We have a question online from Mr. Siobhan Campbell. Siobhan, can you unmute and just fully identify yourself and go ahead with your questions?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, Siobhan. Good morning.
Good morning. Siobhan Campbell, Nationwide.
I didn't know that your middle name was Wayne.
Just a quick question to the Legal Affairs Minister. The move towards a republic, what impact, if any, would that have on maintenance of the Privy Council as our final appellate court? And if it has no impact, is there a consideration in that move towards a republic to move away from the Privy Council?
Thank you for your question, Siobhan. There are two distinct issues, distinctly different procedures for changing those provisions of the Constitution. You do know that there is mixed views. There are mixed views on which final court should be Jamaica's at this time. But I assure you that the decisions to be taken will be taken in the best interest of all Jamaicans.
Thank you.
A question inside.
Minister, just before you leave, we need 6 months before we can go to a referendum on moving to the Republic of Jamaica. Has drafting instructions been given for the legislation to effect that? And when do you expect the bill to be tabled in Parliament?
We're not at the stage of drafting instruction as yet. I have completed my assessment of the deeply entrenched reform issues. You do know that the process has to be carefully sequenced. We've had more than enough litigation on constitutional matters, which means that we have a lot that we can learn from and a lot of guidance. The questions also to be put to the electorate, those have to be carefully designed. But I think all Jamaicans can be excited at the prospects. You know, we've had a lot of talk about this kind of constitutional reform, and Prime Minister Holness has taken the step that no other Prime Minister before him has taken. And I assure you that I have been doing the work, and personally I'm very excited because as a constitutionally supreme jurisdiction, and from my time as Attorney General and now in this role, I have learned so much. And I have been very close to the issues of the people. And I'll tell you that there is much to be excited about. So don't rush it, Arthur. Process is as important as the event.
Wait, Minister,
and the substance.
you're giving me an answer like Kamina Johnson-Smith.
No, not at all.
Minister, can you say to Jamaica today, what is your target for the legislation to establish a Republic of Jamaica? What is your target?
You know, Arthur, you are such an experienced journalist, and I have read so many concerns being raised about grand announcements and the failure to keep timelines set. I will be making my presentation, and I think Minister Bartlett has assigned me May 11, which is an anniversary date of the ministry. By that time, I'll have much to tell you. No, you can't ask me to be so indisciplined, because policy is not decided by a minister at the podium, nor is it decided in the public space. And if we're going to honor the Constitution, then at least let's honor the processes and the procedure. As excited as we are. Good man, if we haven't learned from anything, we must learn that we have to sequence our steps, and we must learn that the procedures set out in the Constitution have to be faithfully abided by. So stay with me, and then you'll be as joyful as I am when that time comes. You think we have August morning yet? Wait until it comes.
Kimon, yes?
I guess now we all know why she has been given custody of the process. Hi, Kimon.
Minister, is the government pressing for sanctions against the leadership or staff of the Transport Authority over the Christmas party held in December? And will the government's treatment of several ministers who floated the DRMA at Shensia's album launch undermine its own authority in this case?
Party? Could you...
As reported by the Gleaner.
Oh, I did not see that report.
Transport Authority.
It would be challenging for me to comment on something that I've not seen.
Really, Minister?
I did not see it. I can comment, however, on the ministers, and I will say to you that the Prime Minister didn't make a comment in Parliament on that matter, and he did present a possible or an approach by which the ministers should participate. And I will confirm to you that the ministers have been very willing and cooperative in that approach. I suspect Minister Grange will announce soon where those funds will go and the rest of that story. But as it relates to Transport Authority, it's something that we need to look at. So you're saying that they breached the DRMA? That should be a police matter, though, don't you think? I think so. I mean, they are the constituted authority on that. I mean, I would not, even if I'm aware of it, be able to pronounce on that if it is against the statute, which I cannot confirm because I didn't read the story. My apologies. Next question.
Good morning, Vondine Williams, Scene TV. In a follow-up for the question asked by the Jamaica Gleaner, the Antiguan Prime Minister Gaston Brown described Jamaica's decision to appoint its own candidate as a monumental error which could divide CARICOM. Is the Jamaican government willing to withdraw Kamina Johnson-Smith's nomination if it poses a problem to CARICOM colleagues?
So, thank you very much. Jamaica is a sovereign democracy. What that means is that Jamaica has a right and a responsibility towards its citizens and itself to push forward an approach that is in the interest of Jamaica. That interest also takes into consideration the regional associations and international associations that we're a part of. And I don't think that there is any evidence of a division in CARICOM. As a matter of fact, as we speak, the Prime Minister is currently engaged with his colleagues. You would have heard that many states, both in the region and outside of the region, have come on board with the candidature of Kamina Johnson-Smith. What that says to you is that Jamaica's decision was sensible. It's a decision that was well thought out, recognizing the tremendous support that the candidature would have. As it relates to whether Kamina will withdraw, emphatically no. We, as Jamaicans, and I make this comment generally, must recognize that since 2016, since I have been here associated with the government, the Prime Minister and the government has enacted and embraced and pushed forward a very pragmatic foreign policy, a policy that seeks to build bridges, to form collaborations with states all across the world. It is for that reason that so many of them have stepped up and endorsed Kamina Johnson-Smith. It would be very unwise, I think, for Jamaica's foreign policy to be determined by an external force. And I don't think that it would even be sensible for us to even contemplate that sort of approach. Thank you very much. And I would love do you know that Minister Malaufort used to be in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? But I want her to come and add something to the conversation.
The state of Jamaica is different from the government of Jamaica. And it is an important distinction in international law. And I know that news stories thrive on controversy and contrarian perspective. I'd like to invite my fellow Jamaican journalists to carry positive stories about this candidature. I mean, every contest has its issues, and there are no guarantee. But I think we should be justly proud that at this time, Jamaica is able to field a candidate on which there is no divergence in perspective as to her competence to lead the organization. So let us not feed into the other issues. There are genuine concerns, but I invite you, for Jamaica's sake, especially in this our 60th year, let us be proud that we have someone that we can field as a candidate. And it's not about your personal feelings on the matter, but as Jamaicans, let us celebrate Jamaica's contribution. Regardless of what the outcome will be, the fact that we can field a candidate at this level on whom there is no disagreement about her eminence, qualification, and suitability for the position is something we should all be justly proud of.
Thank you.
And I think it's highly appropriate, the way you framed it, and the fact that Minister Bartlett is here. Brand Jamaica is a strong brand. It's a positive brand. It's a brand that brings people together. It's about love. It's about unity. It's about freedom. It's about liberation. It's about self-actualization. That's why so many people come here. That's why our music is so enticing. That's why when we stand on platforms, whether it's at the G20, whether it's at the COP, there's respect for Jamaica. And we should be very careful as Jamaicans to allow external forces to caricature us. We have to be very strong in protecting our brand, protecting the dignity and integrity of our society and how people see us outside. And that, I think, is part of the work that Minister Bartlett has done in terms of promoting Brand Jamaica with JTB, is to protect the brand, because those things have spin off. We could not be here today discussing the candidature of Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith without tremendous work done by tourism, the work that was done in Dubai and other places to extend the reach of Jamaica. So I associate myself, Minister, with your positioning that we have to look at this as an immensely positive development, and we should not allow anything to throw negative oil in good water. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, Minister. We do have one more online, and then we'll take one more in-house. So let's go to Mr. Gavin Riley, and then we'll end with our question in-house. Gavin?
Yes, good morning. My question is to Minister Morgan in relation to the CARICOM Secretary General bid. Mr. Holness, in his presentation in Parliament yesterday, said that Jamaica was more or less confident it would succeed in becoming, well, assuming the post of Secretary General. Is there any consideration by the government at this time for a replacement in terms of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? And secondly, is there any need for Jamaica to review its standing in CARICOM?
You've asked some very high policy questions. I'm a lowly minister without portfolio, but I will try to attempt them. The appointment to cabinet, especially for an area as sensitive and important as foreign affairs, that's the imprimatur of the Prime Minister. I could never even opine on it, other than to say we await his decision as to what he will do. As it relates to a review, so we should not be, we're in a competitive political environment here in Jamaica, and we're also in a competitive global environment. Countries are going to put forward candidates, and other countries are not going to like it. But the fundamentals are what are important. Jamaica has a very positive relationship with every single member of CARICOM. As a matter of fact, Jamaica seeks positive relationships globally. We are not a country of division. We're a country of building bridges. So I don't know if we could even go to that extent to contemplate review. We did a review already, and there was conclusions in the review about how Jamaica should approach deepening our engagement with CARICOM in the area of trade and foreign policy generally. So I don't know if we should take it that serious. And Minister, would you like to join me here?
Just to reiterate that the appointment of any minister is constitutionally the prerogative of the Prime Minister. But in respect of CARICOM, ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica is a proud member of the Caribbean community. But I want you to understand what our Prime Minister Holness is about. Placing the interest of Jamaica first, even in a regional context, is an indication of the importance that he places on ensuring that Jamaicans can realize their goals. I think the time is ripe for us to look at where Jamaica has been, where we are now, and where we'd like to go. Prime Minister Holness has indicated that he is committed to securing the economic independence of Jamaica. He's committed to ensuring that people can earn a living that is decent. There are foundational issues that we must get right. And for a long time, the economic foundation of the nation has been in a shambles. And I think not one Jamaican has escaped the negative consequences of the economic problems that Jamaica has been in for many, many years. And so I would like you to join the government led by Prime Minister Holness in getting to that place of understanding that time has come for Jamaica to put Jamaica first. And this is not to say that we cannot be part of a region. We don't have a CARICOM parliament, you know, ladies and gentlemen, unlike the EU that has a European parliament and members of the European Parliament. It's a little different community arrangements that we have here. So let's not get into the trap of pitting CARICOM against Jamaica, because at the end of the day, everyone gets to government domestically through democratically held elections. So I go back to say, let us celebrate this moment. Let us celebrate it for Jamaica first, for the Caribbean community next as the region, and for the entire world, that Jamaica is able to field a candidate that is eminently qualified to head the Secretariat of the Commonwealth of Nations.
Thank you, Minister. And so our final question, Ramon?
Minister, why have we not heard the names of the countries backing Minister Johnson Smith?
But, Kimon, if you're running an election, you don't reveal your strategies. You couldn't. I mean, so